Good afternoon. We're beginning our demographic session, and I, as a participant of all previous Gaidar forums, I can say that demography has always been in this centerpiece of all Gaidar forums, and one way or the other. So the demographic topics always were under magnifying glass. But we have a specific session today. We want not to talk not only about demography, but we want to talk what is the basis, what is the foundation of our knowledge about demographic processes, statistics. So since this is the basis, that is gives us a chance to identify the dynamics, the levels, and all important telling indicators and metrics. That's very important, and vis-a-vis the development of the country. So demography is one of the most important parameters that define it all: economic, social development, political development, and all other components. And so we representatives of Russian expert community, we know very well how much it means for us. The thing is that this term, demographic crisis. So we keep remembering it, and we keep talking. So, but nobody knows us where it started, where it will end, and how it's what this is all about. No one. What are the motives of the demographic crisis? Why we call it crisis? Or the birth crisis is one term. Crisis of mortality is another. Demographic boundaries is something else, and so mortality, morbidity, quantitative. So certainly in mortality, some positive changes have taken place. And we're asking ourselves, is it the end of the Russian demographic crisis, or it goes on? No, because now just we left the crisis of birth crisis and the mortality crisis. So we are finding ourselves in another trap of demographic waves. Another trap of demographic waves, and then social economists fully realize that, and so we are crawling into this stage of new demographic crisis, which is the crisis of very tragic reduction of economically active population against the background of aging population. And so this correlation so without any economic crisis, without any crisis, always raise the issue as to whether the Russian economy will be able to sustain the rates of economic development against such dramatic reduction of the number of economically active population. So the global population, the global history does not give us any answer, because no one has gone through it in peaceful times. So we know that during wars, so these things were possible, but we're just falling into a long demographic crisis, and it is manifested first and foremost in the labor market. So we start asking ourselves, maybe we are in the middle of a demographic crisis. As I was saying, in order to answer these questions, so we can do that only if we have good, reliable information sources. And the demographic statistics, demographic statistics, is a subject for scrutiny, and we're not an exception. And demographic indicators for us play a very important role. In this connection, we at the Academy at RANEPA and with our partners that are working in the demographic area, I think that it's an event, very important event. An event is that we have released a very interesting paper, although it's called a sheet, a list, but it's a very long, comprehensive list, and actually that tells about the most important indicators of modern Russia, and by itself. The fact that we have this information instrument certainly is worthy of our attention. That's the reason why we're going to dedicate our today's session to this event, this paper. And let me introduce our participants. But we have a very representative very renowned panel composition of experts. Among them, Sergei Scherbov, Deputy International Lab of Demography and Human Capital of RANEPA, and Deputy Director of the Program Population of the World, and Vienna University, Vienna, Pater Kabat, CEO of the International Institute of Applied and Systemic Analysis, so will join us later. So very authoritative organization on demographic issues as well. Mr. Forsten Goods, who heads at this institute the program of population of the world, and we're happy to see him in our ranks. Certainly discuss Russian demography. Certainly, we want to have among our participants representatives of State Statistics Agency, and Mr. Laykam, the Deputy Head of the Federal Service on the State Statistics, will be with us too. And then Valery Yelizarov, so then Population Research Laboratory of Moscow State University. Then Konstantin will join us too, RANEPA's representative from the Institute of Economic Policy, named after Gaidar. And so this is the composition, and that's so we're going just to do it. Since some assumptions, so some kind of jumping board, so then we have the main report and the key speaker, and the key speaker is Sergey Scherbov, who is the who developed this so demographic sheet, and because so it's a big work, and so he so it's certainly just to cover it this serious deep work in 7 minutes is not possible, and we cannot allow 2 hours for that, but so still, so he will just give us the gist, and he will only scratch the surface, but he will give us the main idea of what this is all about, and it will probably encourage you to read more after that about this paper. Thank you for the introduction. And I have little screen and 3 gadgets, but I'll try to combine them all. Okay. Слушай, прогони вот этого. Okay, I will. So let me talk about this data sheet, Russian demographic data sheet. I'm not going to discuss so the analytics, and so I will just. Okay, the structure of the list, then the new indicators, okay, and the demographic forecast, so some pictures about the population size, so deaths and births, and so there are many regions. I cannot cover it, so there's, all regions are there. And then we'll talk about each of the columns, and some columns will be more specific than others. So I'll be more or less specific because there are some aging indicators. So then that we developed at our institute, and we introduced these new indicators, new indices, and some of you know them, some of them don't. And so what we are going to do with this sheet further. So why do we need this sheet? So we need it because on one sheet that you have in your hands, so we have the whole demography. All the regions are there. You can compare all regions. You can compare all indicators plus forecast. And so you can see what's going to happen to each region, what's there now, what's going to happen, the trends, comparisons, benchmarks, etc., all on this sheet. And so this they may be very useful because there are some indicators that we never calculated earlier. And certainly, the backdrop is that at our institute, at Wittgenstein Center, because we're part of it, all of us, and I had the demography, and Wittgenstein is bigger. So we do 6 sheets on Europe. So this idea behind it, and so it's done on the basis of certain experience with European data. So then there's some materials, so please take them, 2016. Those are our European sheets that were released half a year ago. Then, so we did the same, and actually actually almost the same in Russian data sheet is the same. So then the Russian demographic sheet, all regions of Russia, so city and urban and rural population, all aggregated. And because in Europe, so our demographic sheets, so they're pinned up on all offices, on the walls of every office, in the parliament, state authorities. So very much there is a sheet what happens to the country, so you can see immediately, right away, all pinned up everywhere. Then who did the job? So then State Statistics Committee, Russian State Statistics Committee, we got this data from them and scenarios. So they provided, and the trends of birth rates, migration rates. So the Russian Statistics Committee provided us. Then all the indicators, forecasts. So this is academia and Russian Academy of Sciences, and at our institute we calculated it all. This is what it looks like. It's so very populated, very populated. It's impossible just to show. It's too populated. I hope you can see. I didn't expect the screen would be so small. So this is the map. In all our sheets we have. In European sheets, so there's a graphic information, so like picture, that reflects the main content of the sheet. So the most interesting thing is the map. So for example, there's this the old age threshold. The old age threshold. So Russia versus Europe. So I will tell you what old age threshold is. So then the sheet proper. And so then all the regions of Russia, by all districts, federal areas, constituent units, all they're broken down. And so naturally, the calculation, so they calculated different statistics for urban and rural population. So somewhere we have 2015, there's information about deaths and mortality and longevity is just sometimes different because we didn't have, so birth rate we had, but death rate we didn't. And then the forecast for 2016. So we have some forecasted data and the present day data. And so then initial data. As of today, so there is some good data never printed before, published before. Then on the other side of the sheet, we have pyramids with the old age threshold 2016 and 2035. Then we have some aggregated data by regions. Here we have ratings, thresholds, old age thresholds, and here we ranged of some sampled columns along the lines of different data, and this terminology explanation. So what? So we have just so some bibliography as well, materials. And everything that has to do with aging, so will be The sources are there. On top of it, we have a completely new, recently published policy brief that in four pages it has everything we've done in the last 5 years. All new indicators, metrics, all references, everything is in there. Everything is in there. And at the bottom, but who did it? So how you can refer to this list, who did it and who participated, who contributed, etc. All the acknowledgements, references. So 3 of them are here. Okay. Forecasts. So we had different scenarios. So birth scenario. So as a median age for birth of women, then the child mortality and migration volumes, and then life expectancy projections. So rural and urban projections are made. So migration is tied in so everything just coincides, everything dovetails, everything equals out, and all balances match. And so we build a model of mortality, birth rate, and so this is taken from the aggregated indicators and translated into age coefficients. Very important because in one of the papers I worked at, recently published, we showed that effectively, even if it's the same life expectancy, so the difference of the use of models, different ways, so when they translate aggregated indicators into age coefficients, different factors, so they can lead to big disparity on, for example, so the number of old age people. So so low life expectancy, high life expectancy, because these distortions they creep in. So that's why how we aggregate, how we disaggregate those indicators is very important. We need to streamline that effort. Then it's a different story about population projections. So there are references, and we'll continue working on it. Some new indicators of aging. So in the sheet, so there is a column that related to those new indicators of aging. So old age threshold is determined. Then we call it so prospective median age. Median age prospective, then proportion of population above old age threshold, and prospective old age dependency ratio. So we can, and then we do it vis-a-vis European indicators. So this will be in English. Now look at the scenarios. What scenarios? How they're transformed into what's happening in Russia, how translated it just in Russia. So we had the regions, so how we transform it, aggregate it into on the plane of Russia. So women life expectancy. So the top is city, and this is the rural average. Median is Russia. So urban, rural. So then on both this is sexes, both sexes. So 65, and women a little bit older. So then very pessimistic scenario projection, but that's what we have. This is the scenario. This is the projection. This is the birth rate. So this is the total fertility rate. Total fertility rate. And so it's 2.3 TFR by 2035, and this is so urban, rural, so 186. This is a projection of TFR. So the input determines the output. So the aggregated urban, rural by region, And then, so here migration at a level of 300,000. I'm just going down a little bit. Yes. In the neighborhood of 300,000. And so we see that the population is growing a little bit, and then it will start to go down. And although the net migration is quite high, so births TFR starts to go down because we know that there is a wave of high. So TFR is living, and so then physically, and so the death will rise. So the death rate will go up. So now let's describe the sheet. So first I wanted to do some pictures, but we don't have any pictures. So we have 5 in each column. There are 5 top indicators and 5 lowest indicators. So the population size. Moscow is the biggest number, and the Chukotsky Autonomous is the smallest. And so there's nothing to say about that. Then to 2035 population size, nothing changed, and so then the priority is the same. Numbers changed a little. So thus we made projection in the absence of zero migration forecast, zero migration projection. So what will happen? So Moscow is 11.6, and it used to be 13.2. So then minus 2 million in Moscow. Then this is net migration. Net migration we had by the region, 2015, and so we observed data. 112,000 come from Dagestan, so 13,000 leave from Dagestan. Then a change of the size. Chechen Republic grows very fast, 25% growth from Sevastopol is growing, and the worst, and Kalmykia and Kurgan. So Russia is just going down a little bit. So we'll lose some million, but not many, by 2035. But in zero migration scenario, and then Chechen Republic would grow in faster, and Russia would lose 4% of its population because it is both migration from CIS countries and migration from distant countries. So I'll show you more than we have than you have on the sheets. Different age groups. So there's one number of women to 100 men, and so that's 116 women, 400 men. Champion is Yaroslavl, 123 women, and in Chukotsky Oblast, it's total number. And what's happened? And so aged 60 plus. So here we have regions like Ivanovo Oblast, Murmansk. So there are twice as many women at the age 60 and more, twice as many as men. So because this is something, because they are just lonely people, and this is bad. And so then, 70 plus is even worse, especially in such regions as Moscow. So people of average age, so they're not old. So 70 plus, when we talk about the old age threshold, they're not old. And in Murmansk, Ivanovsk, so there are 3 women per man, 1 man. So they're just people who live alone. And so 2.44 median number. And so closer to the south is much better. Situation improves. But at the age of 80, 5 times different. So 5 women per 1 man in some regions than men. Caucasus is more or less it's 1.3, it's 1.5 women per 1 man. So births, live births, 2015, the projection in 2015, almost 1.5 times more than it will be in 2035 in Moscow. So the situation is everywhere. And so in Chukotsky, nothing is changing there. So deaths in Moscow, 120,000. and will be 160 for the projection. The 2015 Tuva is 3.4, and Leningrad Oblast is 1.3, and 178 in 2015 TFR. Then life expectancy projection. We in Russia is the whole world, so we have regions where so almost like European level, even better. So because we have in Europe or twice like Africa, horrible, and so we have the whole gamut. So this is women, but men is like Africa, 56 years of age. But Moscow is at the European level for women. Then expected life expectancy at 60. So then a difference to 10 years. Women and so Ingushetia 25.7, Tuva 17.7. So Tuva is a champion. So at the bottom of the list. And the same with men. In Ingushetia, Moscow is this level of Europe, just like European level. So this is the expected life expectancy at 60. At 60. So 23.5. Like in Sweden, we have 22. And Tuva 13, less, 10 years less than the expected. So median age of population. Median age is a measure of aging. They use it. So median population age. So traditional median age is 38.8 in 2016. By 2035. It will be 5.5 years higher, so which is a lot because the projection period is only 20 years. Then prospective age. Why median age is not the best indicator to determine aging, and why? So we need just to determine it differently. So who is considered to be an old woman or an old man? So when the person is 60, is he old or young? And so when students say that you're an old guy, so nearing extinction, like a dinosaur, but it's an average age right now, especially in Western countries. So then 60, so 93% of the population live up to be 60. And 150 years ago, so only 25% of people lived up to be 60. And so that is why.
I guess 120, 150 years ago, 60 years, a 60-year-old was an old guy, and today it is a min age. So that's why, hence, the idea that old age is not just a fixed number that is used everywhere, but it is something that depends on the average life expectancy. And then we just go on, and this is a property of quality of life and the functionality of a person. So that's two ages. Chronological age and this prospective age. So if a person, an actual age is something that everybody understands. That's the number of years you have lived. But prospective age people will live the same number of years approximately. I'll show you on the pictures. So to understand the prospective age, we need the standard year. It's like inflation. When we say that the price of a product in 50 years will be 10 times the current price, we do not care because we don't understand what is the inflation. That's why in economics we have the notion of permanent sustainable prices. So in the same manner, in the demography, as we use the price index, here we use the chart of further living or a standard year. So that's England and Wales in 1900. women at 40. That was their life expectancy. At 40 years old, well, that was the residual lifespan. So in all those ages, standard of 1900 or 1990. So it's equivalent. It's like the standard price, time value of money. So we consider the life expectancy change. So what was happening, for instance, in Japan? Take Japan. This axis is age, and the x-ages is year. In the year 2000, 40 years old have had the same life expectancy as in 1970, 31s. Or in 1961, those who were 30 years of age. So this famous notion is the 40 years old are the new 30 years old. So that's how the picture shows it analytically. So 40 years olds are expected to live the same number of years. So we see that the people physically become younger, the 60 years old today. So, and people do not actually care how much they live. Usually people think in terms of how long they are still yet to live. So people plan their things. They buy houses when they're 60 or 70 because they expect to live for another, say, 20 years. And that's how they make decisions, knowing approximately their life expectancy. People really become younger physically, and there's lots of literature about it. For instance, a Chinese consumer will buy now the products, the foods that people 10 years younger would used to buy. So in Russia, the situation was slightly different. So with the same lines, in 20 sharp, we had the same life expectancy as 40 years ago, but now it is showing the trend to improvement. So we hope it will increase. So looking at the median age, it is at median age. This is age. If we now look at it in perspective, what are we getting? We are trying to standardize it through the higher life expectancy. I'll give you an example. England and Wales. This is the traditional median age. That's how it grew. This one doesn't matter. Since 1841 to 2007. And this is the prospective median age. So instead of aging, we have younger population as soon as we consider the median, the life expectancy. And they would overlap, they would meet in a certain standard point. And now back to our list. So we shall calculate the prospective median age. What does it mean here? We just consider one point, because for 2015, it does not make sense to calculate the median age because it is the same. We take 2015 as a standard, as a benchmark, and 2035 in our list, we are showing 1 year. So we look at the median age and life expectancy, and both genders are together, and we just overlap both of them. In 2015, the life expectancy was the same as in median age in 1935. This is this prospective age. It considers the life expectancy, longer life. This is our prospective median age. We call it standard, but it's the same. First, we added it prospective. Now we change the name and call it standard. And the standard, with the accounting for the life expectancy. And that's where the map is showing the old age threshold. What is it? So again, we are coming back to the elderly people, 60 years old. Is it old or not? We have just told you that 100 years old, it was an old person. Now it is not an old person. But it's not just in time, it's in space. If we take a 60-year-old woman in Japan or in Sweden or in Burkina Faso, somewhere in Central Africa, these are different, totally different worlds. Even in Russia, if we take some remote village in Moscow, we again have totally different polar worlds. So the old age threshold more and more often would be understood as a thing with different properties. For instance, prospective life expectancy. And for a number of reasons, we selected the age with the remaining lifespan of 15 years. So this is the old age threshold, when a person is yet approximately 15 years old, 15 years to live. So now there are many articles and books about it. So I shall repeat myself. It is flexible. A person does not turn into an old age person at 55 or 60. When the United Nations calculates since 1955 the 60 years as a threshold, I believe, and in 100 years it's going to be again 60 years older. So I believe it is absurd. So the old age threshold is a moving target, and if you take the same age of 60 100 years ago and 100 years later, then it looks absurd. But when you are reasonable and you talk about the people faculties, then we have to consider morbidity. So again, coming back to references and literature, I didn't tell you in the very beginning, we have a grant, a European grant on aging, 2 million euros, where we work on redefining those indicators of aging. And partially, I used it to prepare this list. So at this very moment, as a threshold and life expectancy of another 15 years and less, because it correlates to somehow morbidity. We have works, it's not exact, but it has to do with morbidity. So what happens here? In Europe, we observe the old age threshold for different countries since 1900 to our times, how this age was changing. Both genders, virtually, if we now move over, it's around 74 years. So now approximately 74 years in Europe, where we expect people to live for another 15 years. So that's average. So this is our list. The main image on the first page is by the regions, and the selected regions, and the red line is showing 16 and 35 and the threshold age in the manner I have just described. And the rating of the regions, like Ingushetia and Moscow, are approximately at the European level, slightly lower, but not far away. And Tiva and Magadan and Chukotka are behind. Slightly meaning 10 years behind. Tiva and other areas, so men are considered old at 57, and Ingushetia and Moscow are old at 70. And the share of people of elderly age. So So far, our official pension age is 55 and 60 for women and men. We are looking at the share of such people, and we see that Tula is a champion. Almost 30% of population belong to this age group, and the Chechen Republic, Tiva, some 10%. And it means that this share in 2035, some areas have 35% of people of this age group. And should we take this old age threshold and calculate the share of population, and the picture will be totally different. I'm showing you now European countries. And the progress since 2013, this is standard 65. And if we expect what's important is the progress, the dynamics. And then coming back to the region, the share of people exceeding this threshold. The numbers are considerably lower. In Pskov, some 19%. Around 30, and the republics in the Caucasus are even lower, and that's the forecast. That does not change much. So considering the mortality forecast, virtually we have no aging, even in this situation in Russia. Now speaking about the demographic load, is considered one of the important measures, indicators of aging. So it's the ratio of people of the age where they cannot work to the people who can work. So it's approximately 57 in Tula, and the forecast is 77%. 77% is the demographic burden. Is absolutely unthinkable. Should we take the old age threshold, the indicator that we meant 15 years and less, the picture will change. So again, that's how the demographic burden behaves in Europe. As soon as we move 2035, it will be 36%. And it used to be 77. We just changed one indicator and we have less old people. And we have introduced two other columns, which do not exactly belong to us, but we consider them to be very important. What is that? The share of people with higher education and up. So like MBA and doctors and professors, 40 to 45 for men and women. Why do we believe this indicator to be very important? Because 45 years according to the census. This is the very age when people are very unlikely to change their education status. As a rule, they have already stopped learning and have university education and up. That's number one. And these people are the most economically active. And all those people will reach the year of 2035. They will live at that time. So what are we having? The men in Moscow, 45% have 65% of women have university education, and in Chechnya only 13%. And usually in European areas you have more women with university education, but not in the southern republic. And definitely this indicator is a human factor and correlates with the life expectancy. So yes, I have 2 more minutes. And what are we going to do about it? As soon as we finish our forum, we shall immediately upload all those PDF sheets on that website, and the data. Further, we plan to use a good format to publish our forecasts for the age groups and other things. In addition to that, we want to upload some maps, some charts, so that the people could use it. Q&A session. As we listened to the presentation about some statistics and the new demographic methodology on aging, certainly for the Russian audience, it is a very important study. But I would like to immediately hear from Росстат and pass the floor to Konstantin Laykam as first. Росстат is a supplier of basic information. Without their data, we cannot exist. And we always place our hopes in them because they are the primary source of demographic information. On the other hand, the new thresholds, they need to talk about my demographic sheet.
And as we were saying earlier, so Росстат is responsible for Росстат for all the demography metrics, and so we have different ways the data is represented on our site. It's different in our statistics books, in our bulletins, in our guidelines, and what we have seen is a new form of how statistics can be presented. And we were very much interested to participate in this effort, and we provided the data. And what I like about this sheet, first, so I think it's very compact. We've been publishing, so it's good. Its relevance is important. So this sheet has been developed on the basis of the data, so our scenarios. So our most recent scenarios that have not yet been published, so they're being coordinated, but here, so they already have the form of projection. So how you developed those scenarios? What is the basis? As you know, the scenarios, demographic scenarios. So we calculate once in 2 years, every other year, and simultaneously do the forecast. The projection, and we saw 3 scenarios: so high, median, and low. So then a low one is extrapolation of existing demographic trends. So then high is the norm which you want to achieve. So the goals that the concept speaks about, demographic policy, and the may decrease of the president. And the average is the most realistic one. Because it takes into account all the trends and measures of the demographic policy. And so this scenario for the medium option so has been provided to this to the sheet makers. So a birth rate, so average average projection provides for slide, please. Average, so middle projection provides for next. So then the birth rate middle is TFR by 2025 1.86 TFR, and stabilization at this level. So we assume that maternity will age like in other countries, but it will slow down. So then mortality middle. So so then we do the birth. So then the pessimistic scenario, optimistic scenario, put it together, and when it came to the average figure, divided by 2, and remembering the expectancy in the last 10 years. And so the first the first years of the forecasted period coincides with the norm. And the pessimistic death scenario, mortality scenario, the projection mortality will be isolated only in child mortality. Then expected life expectancy. So just at birth. Then migration factored in. So average scenario provides for that the main donor countries are the Central Asian, former CIS countries, and this is the assumption. Then the net migration by 2035, about 100,000 annually. Then for the projection of international migration broken by regions, and so the number of arrivals is a pro rata share as we have it now between 2012 2015. So we assume this scenario assumes that to Russia. So there won't be any new any more migration. So it will not change anything. So that's why it will be as is, and no changes are forthcoming. So thus in the event of rising in endogenous net migration, so that's a different case. So St. Petersburg, Krasnodar region. Moscow, so many arrivals we expect there, and then Central Federal area, and then some regions that lost many people to migration in the preceding years. Then when they developed those scenarios, we're using not only the current statistics data, but new sources of information like sampling, social demographic studies. So then it's a micro-census that was done for the first time in 2015, and then sampling of TFR and plans for having babies, etc. So these questions and other factors that impact people's health. And the most important source of information is census, all Russian census, and it's so it's reflected in the demographic sheet. Then the next census will take place in 2020, and so this is by law on national census. So when we started preparing for the census, and so the agencies accumulated a lot of information, a lot of data, big data, so information about the population, and certainly we're going just to draw heavily on their data sheets, very important. So we revised the sources, checked on them, and unfortunately it turned out that not all the sources are reliable enough. And so it cannot be used as an alternative source because of its it not be a basis for a census. It's not good enough. And then so they don't have the information that is determined by law, and then the categories of people. So there are lots of information that's not there, and that makes those data banks irrelevant for the upcoming census. And then by a presidential decree in the Russian Federation, will create just one information resource, single comprehensive information resource about population by 2023. So Ministry of Finance is involved in it with the Treasury. And so we hope that this resource will be made available by 2023, and we'll be able to use the main information that will be can be drawn from this data bank, and and so then the next coming after 2023, so by 2030, so we'll be able just to get information from this data bank. Because the list of data registers. So this is the way data is collected. So then the experience of doing the census in 2010 requires some changes to be made for the next census. So we have new chains, new flows of information. So people want to use internet during census. We need to provide this service to them if they want to use internet. And so then we try just in sample, in small sample census trials. So we gave a chance to those who collected information to use tablets, and they liked it, and they demanded, and we provided them this opportunity to use tablets and computers and use internet. So those who want to use internet are welcome to do so. Those who cannot, so we do it the old way, the old-fashioned. Then tablets can be used only in large cities and big constituent units because a lot of sensors so certainly would increase the cost of the census. And then so we'll be using internet. But still, at the end of the internet census, so the censors will have just to go around and knock on every door, and talk to those who have failed to provide their information. And so that's to fine-tune this new technology. We'll have to. To try a test census, a trial census. Unfortunately, it's not part of the budget. So we have certain budget for 2016, but 2017, but for the census, so no money has been earmarked yet for doing this census. So we aim at doing the traditional census, standard, regular one, by 2020. And by that time, we'll be using all innovations and all approaches to increase the quality of collected information and make the work of censors more efficient. Okay. Now, then the publishing the results. So we decided to do it on internet without paper. And then the press conferences, seminars. So then it will be. So we'll have necessary investment, disbursement to be made to take care of paper information as well, printed copies. Thank you. Thank you, Konstantin Emelievich. I wanted to comment on census from my own experience, my research and study experience. 2017, 2020 is far away, and we know that the census will definitely take place. But since I was a member of the Commission on Census Commission for 2 years, I can tell it's not that obvious. It's not that easy. And when we even just doubt the necessity to do another census. So the closer we are to that census, the more often we hear this maybe makes no sense. And because the modern methods of demographic analysis do not provide for doing a census in an old-fashioned way. What's the point? So because so then the instruments, so how to then the sheet, census list, all that, and the technical equipment. This is all obsolete. This is all. That's a big obstacle. So then if we use equipment, so it could be a barrier, or it could be certainly could help to do the census well. And I think that the closer we are getting to the census, the more issues and challenges we will have. And I think that we need to tell the expert community to support this. because we need to prove the value of the results. And that's why it's good that the Gaidar Forum of 2018, so they are going to speak about that at the next forum. So then now let's go back to the subject matter of our meeting. So this demographic sheet that we speak about, it's a joint effort of Росстат, RANEPA, and International Institute of Applied and Systemic Analysis, Austria, Vienna. There's a very well-known institute that is IIASA acronym. I'd like to welcome, we have two representatives of this institute, and would like certainly want the CEO of this institute, Pavel Kabat, to tell us a little bit, because we have a very wide agenda of research, but demography is a weighty component in your research, in your agenda, and we understand that it's not accidental and so logical, and would like to give you the floor to touch upon this issue, demography in modern applied economic and social research in Europe, please.
Очень спасибо. Я понимаю по-русски очень хорошо, но говорить тяжело, so я говорю английски.
I understand Russian, but I prefer to speak English, right?
So thank you very much for having me here, having IASA here, having my colleagues here. Just a few words about IASA before I come to the subject. As you know, IASA is a product of two things: problematic times and vision. Vision and leadership. And I would like to say here that the leadership and vision came in the 60s, late 60s, 70s, both from the former Soviet Union, leadership at the time, Prime Minister Kosygin, Alexei Kosygin, with the United States President Lyndon Johnson, to establish this institute, which is partly sitting here today. And I would like to repeat the words which are still very well written in the archives of Kremlin and also White House. I saw both. At that time, those two leaders said, despite of the divide, at that time it was divide called Berlin Wall and East and West, why don't we put together the best scientists from both sides of the divide to look into the problems which are too complex for one single discipline, one single institution, one single country, and one single economic political bloc. That was in 1972, citing Alexei Kosygin and Lyndon Johnson. If you now put our minds 44 years later and close the eyes, did very much change? We are still facing divides. We have multiple divides. It used to be a black and white, which was East and West. Now we have divides in everything, including demographic divide and the equality divide. I am pleased to report to you that IASA is back into this niche of trying to provide a fundamental contribution to bridging this divide. Russian Federation is a very important member of IASA, which meanwhile grew to 24 member countries and very soon 25. All the BRICS are members of IASA. We are having Iran, and we are waiting every day for final application from Israel. We have Pakistan and India, United States, United Kingdom, and others. So it became a player of the global magnitude, and Russian contribution and Russian leadership of IASA is fundamental. Yesterday I had a chance to talk to your Prime Minister, Mr. Medvedev. We have been at this special tea, and we emphasized how important it is to keep collaborations growing. And not only growing, to keep Russian Federation in a very prominent, as I mentioned, co-leading position with IASA. Now, coming back to the subject of today, and I am, of course, seated between two prominent colleagues, real world leaders in the demography science, Sergei Scherbov, who shares a little bit of my history, because probably the reason I speak Russian, you would understand, I was born in former Czechoslovakia, he was born in former Soviet Union, and we both ended up in Holland. I have been living in Holland for 40 years, and I don't know how long, Sergey. Okay, and then we went to Austria, so we are global citizens. So he's one of the world leaders, and on my left side, Professor Wolfgang Lutz, who is, and I think he is very modest to say it, the world leader in the modern demography. leading IASA, leading international community in this context. So I'm sitting in the middle here, so I will not repeat demographic science. They are much better than I am in that. I will just say a couple of things which are fundamental. To face this enormous challenge of global transformations, of the future of the world economies, of the future of development agenda and sustainability, it simply cannot be addressed anymore only by the natural sciences. We've got at IIASA climate, leading top-edge science, we have energy, we have program on ecosystems, but what really will matter is my belief for the next 10 years will be the way how we understand the human agents, the human capital in the system. All the way up from the individual you and I, all the way up to the way how the nations and countries will lead their agendas to education, to capitalization on education, dealing with migration, study labor migration, dealing with aging. This is something which, unfortunately, until about 5 years ago, was not that visible in the global agendas. We believed that we could solve it by technology and by more of these little things which everybody has. I actually think we were wrong. So to have this opportunity to talk here today, my two colleagues, about the way how IIASA approaches the demographic profile, demographic research, the way how it influences even the cognitive way of your thinking, the way how the agents called human will position themselves in this global transformation is very fundamental. I expect this field growing in the future very much. I expect it entering many of the international arenas, United Nations discussions of the private sector, and I do expect that the collaboration which started by having Sergei Scherbov also part-time here at RANEPA and having Wolfgang Lutz here today will grow substantially, both in depth and width for the future. So thank you for having us here. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you here. And I'm absolutely sure that we will be coming back more and more. And let me stop with one more thing. Those who were not at IIASA so far, I'm not going to ask you how many of you were not, but let me extend to you invitation to visit us, to see what's possible in collaborative sense. We are collaborating at all possible levels, from students, PhD students, postdoc, all the way up to senior professors. So this is my open invitation for you to explore this opportunity. We'll be privileged to have you over there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And our expert audience knows the value of international expert teams, international projects, because social, economic, and demographic research from the very beginning, so they provide their international and interdisciplinary nature. So then, the fact that your institute does a systemic analysis, we understand the value and the methodological key. And but we hope that our cooperation will evolve into a long-term, large-scale program, because you had talks with the director of the academy, Mr. Mao, and so good plans, great plans are in store for us. And we're happy and we hope that not only the demographic sheet and the new products will be the result of this fruitful cooperation. But now, we'd like just to follow up on the demographic issue. And we know Mr. Lutz, who heads the program of world population at IIASA. And I had a question. So since the demographic sheet has its history, and the demographic sheet has done on other countries, European countries, IIASA must have an answer. Who is the user? Who is the beneficiary of this product? Experts, statisticians, who? So what is the applied value? Is there any demand for this kind of product? Would like to know what's in store for us. Is this just a gift for us, for the expert community, or there is more intrinsic, inherent value to it?
Thank you very much. Thank you first for the kind invitation. What I want to do in this short intervention is to put what has been said on Russian demography a bit into the international context, but also in the broader social, economic, and even environmental change context. And that's, as Pavel Kabat just said, at IIASA, that's what we are there to do, the systemic analysis of how the human population interacts with the economy and with the natural environment. But before going into this, I think I should start with complimenting Rostad for providing such an excellent and solid data statistical basis for these kind of analysis. For us demographers, data really is the essential. It's our bread and butter every day, and without data we cannot do anything. And I should also say that censuses do continue to serve a very important role as the primary source of data that then can be complemented with vital statistics and survey data. And some countries have moved to abandon their conventional censuses into sort of register-based censuses, like my own country, Austria, just did so only in 2011 in the most recent census, but it's still kind of a census, and it requires the register to be good enough to really capture everybody, and this is not always the case. So there's a strong argument that I'm happy to support all political moves to really go ahead with trying to do a very good and solid census in 2020. Now, this data that we've seen, are they a reason for concern or not? Is it justified to talk about a demographic crisis, as many people do, and particularly in the east of the European continent, the word is frequently used by politicians, but also by scientists. So what constitutes the crisis? Well, I think there are two elements to it. The one is it's a concern about the population aging, and I'm going to say a few more words. And the other is also in some countries where the population is actually shrinking, has started to shrink. It's not the case in Russia, but it's the case, for instance, in Bulgaria, where the population was almost 9 million in 1990, and now it's fallen to 7.4 and may continue to fall to 6 million. So that's quite a rapid decline in population, and that is, of course, associated with the fear of less importance of the nation as such and compared to their neighbors. So these are all valid, but sometimes relatively emotional, if not ideological issues. What the international debate over the last years really has shown us that it's not sufficient to look just at the human numbers, not just look at the head counts, how many heads there are, but also consider, and that's very important also for the national well-being, what is inside the heads. What are the skills of the people? What can they actually do? How productive are they? That is really the main driver of economic growth and of human well-being. Just to illustrate this, like you may remember in the 1970s, China was already the most populous, the biggest country with the biggest population in the world. But nobody seriously considered China as a power, nor economically, nor military, nor whatever. China was just that poor. The majority of the population was illiterate. Just the only time when China ended up in the headlines is when there was another big famine with tens of millions of people dying in China. So it was just a disaster, a catastrophe. And now this morning here in this very room, we had a panel about China being the new world power and China overtaking the United States. Well, this happened in just a few decades. Why did it happen? Well, partly I think it started all with the Chinese decision to massively invest in the literacy of the population, then advanced education, but also look into the health dimension. So what we call the human capital of a population. Of course, then together with opening up of the economy, trade, investment, and so on. So it has been a very important success story. And Nigeria is another country that is very populous. They are close to 200 million now. The UN even projects it to reach close to 1 billion by the end of the century. But nobody considers at the moment Nigeria a world power because, again, there's a lack of human capital. So what matters really also for the national strength, I emphasize, not just for economics, but for the national strength, is not just the number of people, but it is what these people are able to do. Now, particularly, maybe just a footnote, in the military context, it used to be, I mean, when Napoleon conquered Europe around 1800, it really was the number of soldiers, the number of marching infantry that make the difference, and the French had many of these young men. But today, in cyber warfare and drones attacking, it is really the level of technology and the skills of people programming these high-tech weapons that makes the difference. It's not the number of soldiers. So, but this, of course, takes a while until it sort of filters into the mind of the politicians and the general population. Now, if population growth and size is not the real problem, is it then population aging? It is true, and you've seen all the numbers, that the number of people who are above certain age thresholds, particularly if you define them conventionally as above the age of 60 or 65, is clearly increasing because of increasing life expectancy, which is a very good thing, and falling birth rates, where people have mixed assessments, whether it's good or not. I mean, in the context of developing countries where the birth rate is still above 4 or 5 children, of course, there's pretty much consensus it's good to bring it down. But what is the best birth rate at a low level? And again, here, it matters what are your criteria. There is this number of 2.1 children per woman everywhere, in almost every mind. And I sometimes call it a virus that is being escaped from the laboratory of technical demographers, because it's only the very specific model of stationary population with a stable, with a regular age structure, no migration, no change in life expectancy or mortality conditions, the 2.1, or actually adjusting for mortality, it's more like 2.04 children per woman, secures a stationary, a constant population. But first of all, this is not the case in any of the European real populations. We don't have these regular age distributions. We do have migration. We do have changes in mortality. So this is a relatively abstract number which has no real meaning for us. So what then is a desirable level of fertility? That's an interesting question, and we actually had some papers produced recently under the title sort of optimal fertility. And it depends what you take in as criteria. What we did is we looked at the old age dependency burden, something that is quite conventional, like how many people of pension age are there per people of working age, sort of the social security burden. But we also factored in education as a proxy for productivity. Given that a more educated, active person at working age is contributing more money financially that then can be used for paying to the elderly. And I'm not going to go into the details, but depending how you structure the model, it is somewhere between 1.6 and 1.8 children on average per woman. Clearly below this ubiquitous number of 2.1. If you then consider migration, which in many Western European countries in particular further adds to the population, then this number goes even lower. But of course, as you all know, migration also raises the question about integration and homogeneity of the population. So I'm not going to go into this in more detail. But even to a closed country without migration, it is assessed to be there somewhere between 1.6 and 1.8. And that's, Russia actually is at the upper end of this range. So I don't really see any reason to be alarmist about this. I think Russia is doing fine. The problem we see is on the human capital side, and here, as Sergey has very clearly shown, on the health of the older population, the healthy life expectancy, which in the West is increasing almost at the same speed as the total life expectancy. So if we take really the sort of the human capital and the healthy life expectancy of people plus their cognitive skills into consideration, that exactly results in the kind of analysis that Sergey explained to you as these new indicators of prospective age, where we don't take the old-fashioned view that in every country of the world at any point in history above age 60 or above age 65, you are considered old. But whether you are old, both individually but also for society, whether you are still contributing positively, depends on your health status and on your cognitive status at an age, and of course of your willingness to work. And of course, I know many pension systems are structured in such a way that you either are allowed to, or in some cases even have to retire at a certain age. And that is clear that in the context of a more healthy elderly population, there also needs to be some flexibility in restructuring our old age security systems. But given this flexibility, I really do not see any real problem associated with population aging, given that you continue to invest in health and in continued education, not only education at young age, but continued education at every age. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was really very interesting and very bright presentation. Я продолжу по-русски и...
And I shall continue in Russian. So, in your brief presentation, you mentioned virtually all angles and facets that are interesting to the Russian expert community and the differences of all the demographic processes in different regions. Indeed, the processes in modern China are absolutely different from European processes, but this regional aspect has a kind of a double meaning for us. Our demographic list is showing how differently processes ongoing processes are in this country. And now one of our participants, Konstantin Kazenin, has been studying for a long time the Northern Caucasus issues. This is a very specific region with very different qualities and lots of myths around this region. Therefore, we are happy that Konstantin is with us at this session, and we are happy to pass the floor and to talk about the Northern Caucasus. This is another important region with special processes. May I have my presentation? Yeah, hi. I apologize to those who have heard what I had to say, but as one of the important aspects of the forecast that we discussed today concerns regional diversity. So I thought it would make sense to talk about it and to what extent those specifics of reproductive behavior in the Northern Caucasus regions that we witness today are prone to be stable or unstable. So I'm not doing any quantitative research or forecasts or projections. I study the regions that are very rich in racial kind of composition, and the Northern Caucasus. Primarily, we are trying to understand what parameters, social, economic, cultural parameters correlate to the reproductive behavior. And we all come to a consensus as researchers that the influence of ethnic diversity of Russia to the birth rate is shrinking. So should we look at the historically at the census and compare, for instance, to measure the ratio, the number of children, we can easily see that the gap shrinks. So from older census to the fresh census. But in the Northern Caucasus, there are still differences from the Russian levels. Let me have my first slide. This is for the rural population. So the cumulative birth ratios for the Northern Caucasus Republic. Why rural? Because in the subject that we study, the rural areas of the North Caucasus are more homogeneous, even in the regions in the northwest, where still they have a large share of the Russian ethnic population. It's more concentrated in the cities. And you can see that in the northwest of Caucasus, the rural cumulative birth ratio is higher than the median Russian one. And this jumping in Gushi ratio makes us think about the accuracy of, make us doubt the accuracy of data. But still, the difference is not high over the median Russian level. Even in Chechnya, the top ratio is at the level that is statistically insignificant. As for the Northwest Caucasus, that is Ossetia, Karachaevo-Cherkessia, and Kabardino-Balkaria, they are lower than the Russian one. But looking at another trend that we have noticed today in this region, we discover a very interesting thing that may be socially significant for the social policy. For Russia and for the two republics, the age of maternity. So, one region in the northeast, in Dagestan, that is blue, and the green, and the Russian rural ratio, the average mothering age. So it's quite rare for the modern world. It's it means that the first baby gets born at a younger age, from quite high level in the early century, that with the traditional high value and reproductive behavior. In Dagestan, we have the reduction, so mothers get younger. And here, for the first, second, and third children, we compare the average mothering age for Dagestan and Russia for the rural areas, and we see that the younger age in Dagestan, so the age becomes younger for the first baby and for the second baby. So the statistics is very similar for Chechnya and Ingushetia. So quite a rare trend in Russia and globally for the younger maternity start in these areas. So again, speaking about my research that we just finished in a region in the Northwest Caucasus, we tried, polling, making survey among married women in rural areas. We tried to understand what were the social parameters that determine the maternity age. So we found out three main blocks that would be important for the region. So low education level, that has to do with younger marriage age, and the first maternity, first baby age. Other reasons.
And so then Dagestan, another set of traits, the trends that's when they become mothers at a younger age. Is everything has to do with the traditional customs, marital life. So those who are interested, so there is an index of patriarch index. So then this is the way the families are organized. So it goes back many centuries. So then women don't work, so they just keep houses for their husbands, and so they traditional ways of keeping women at home and taking care of the house, and then the role of the older generation, the next of kin, blood relations, and the low level of education all contribute to women becoming young mothers. And the third block of questions is religion, definitely. So practicing religion, so prayers, Lent, fasting, attaching great deal of importance to religious education of children, and some other traits as well. This is the third set of traits, so that contributes to the reduction of the age when women become mothers. So these two things are very important, and they are more salient statistically. Then what else? So we came to some more wonderful conclusions. It was to start to speak about projections, an attempt to forecast, to as to how stable the age characteristics of birth age can be. So if the traits are related to the traditional tradition, so then from the older generation to the younger generation, and so that the traits related to religion, and so they're getting stronger. And there is one block of traits tell us that is between the generations, is stable, and it's related to the younger maternity. And by the way, so I'm not showing the models. I have no time, but two these groups of traits among themselves statistically disconnected, and I don't just to show the dynamics by generations. One of the traditional family trait, so how the share of those who did not know each other before the marriage, for example, the spouse, and so the spouses were not. So this is the percentage of those who knew each other before the wedding in Dagestan. So in the younger generation, it's so you can see then 16, 19, 90%. So the majority of women even did not know each other. And so those, but it's dwindling now. It's dwindling now. Just more young spouses knew each other before the marriage. So this parameter is getting eroded, and then the share of the families, they think that their family is religious. So there is no difference. You see, so 16, 19, 20, 24, 35, 39, it's all stable. While the percentage of people who knew each other is going down, it means that more people knew each other. But this religious basis is the same, and no difference, because this is a given thing, and there is no sense to even to evaluate it, because we need just to factor them in when we do the forecasting and when we develop the social policy in the regions of the Northern Caucasus. 3 regions, it's almost 5 million population, and we need just to think about it. And in the last remaining minute, so then social factors, social implications of early maternity of the Caucasus. So then one is a general observation, and another one is more specific of local customs. And so the first implication is determined by two factors. The first factor is unemployment very high, and the second is that the age difference, average difference between husband and wife. So the age difference in Dagestan is about 4 or 5 years, no more than that. That means, yes, average age of the first baby is born at when the mother is 22. So we have a family where both husband and wife, father and mother, so they're still young, very young, and that practically means, against the background of high unemployment, it means that many families who have they want to live very well, and so certainly they have demands for better life, better quality life, but they cannot do that because they don't work. And the second factor has to do with land conflicts. So the land conflicts are related to some cultural norms and principles, and has to do with the norm whereby that the young guy just who creates a family needs to have a separate house. And if there is such a demand, but young families cannot afford to have a separate house, cannot afford to buy a plot of land for a house at the open market, they cannot do that. They can't afford it, and as a result, so then they want to get free land plots from their municipal authorities. And this is so an absolute majority of land conflicts between municipalities that we have in Dagestan. So we have two conflicting parties. So because high birth rate against the poverty and young maternity, because they get the land only because they have kids, so this diversity that we're talking about and these complexities that we're talking about, it's very pertinent and important for the specifics of social characteristics and political implications as well. Thank you, Konstantin. So this research of this type is it's a demographic sociology or sociological demography, but it's very useful, extremely useful, and very good, very telling, very spirited, wonderful presentation. And at the end of the day, in order to somehow impact demography or just factor it in a proper fashion within the framework of economic and social policy, so when it's not how many people, but why? Why? Who are those people who follow this or that pattern of demographic behavior? And this kind of research would be of great value and use because they find answers to these questions. So we know Konstantin very well, and so this effort. So then, unemployment in the North Caucasus, it's one of the very important factors. I always quote my colleague who says that anyone who once saw the market in Nazran, so no one would ever believe that there is a high level unemployment. Because I have visited the Nazran open market, and I agree that there is no such thing as high unemployment in the North Caucasus. So these problems are just included. I'm sure they are not unemployed. It's just a different type of employment. That's the problem. It's just a different type of, because the criteria that were used to define the term unemployment, so they are not in the post-industrial society, but they live in much earlier ages. That's why it's different type of employment. That's a pre-industrial society employment. And now I would like to ask so Mr. Yelizarov, MGO, named after Lomonosov Economic Department, would like to give him a chance to share his comments on about what we have heard so far and about this demographic sheet. So the demographic statistics. So because this may be the subject matter number one for us. Thank you for a chance to speak. We have three questions. We stated three questions. It's the sheet, and it's perception, and then projections, demographic projections, hypothesis, then implications of the results that we are arriving at, having looked at the data, and then the demographic differentiation of the regions. I think that the last two questions, it's the constant agenda for the near future. So we'll be discussing these two issues, so related to the forecasts and implications and demographic differentiation. So here we got this demographic sheet, and the time is coming to the end. I will talk about the sheet. So this is long-awaited, long-expected product. In the age of IT, so we don't print books. We do it only in electronic form, so on the web, and so we don't print only electronic. No paper matter anymore. And but nevertheless, so this good nostalgia for a good printed book is always pleasant, and so that's why I'm happy to handle this sheet of paper. Because the visualization is wonderful. It's very graphic. It's obvious. It's kind of almost 3D. It's wonderful. There's so much information just on one sheet of paper, so less than a square meter. And so now you get on internet, you take only one little piece of mosaic, but when you take this data sheet, so you immediately see the information in a holistic fashion. And we did the same in Europe, but Russia was only just one line was dedicated to it. So we compared Russia to other countries, and so the European sheet is much wider. So the IIASA countries, Caucasus is there as well. There is a lot of information, but not much information about Russia. But now, so we have just wonderful products. All the regions are here. And so then the two main oblasts is one big one, and they're all constituent units here, Khanty-Mansiysk and Yugra. Wonderful, lots of information, 28 columns. And when you look at something good, you want to talk about it, you want to share because you're happy. And so, but then you say that there's something lacking in it, because if it were a bad product, then no need just to talk about it. But since it's a good product, I want to criticize a little bit. And the old information just is at the tip of your fingers, and forecasts, immigration. But there is no, unfortunately, average size of family is not here, so the number of divorces is not here. So, but you can use other source of information. So you can use wonderful resource that Rosstat provides us, and this resource is getting better and better. Certainly, the information is not complete, but the information which is here is wonderful. And then with international institutions, we're going to cooperate. And looking at this sheet, so with the question, who is it for? Sergey was saying that quite a few European politicians use it, and so they pin it up on the wall, etc. And thus I'm thinking about our sheet, and so not their sheet they pin up on the walls of their offices in Europe. And so here we talk about the creators who developed this. But I look at it as a user. And so it's very useful material. And now the demographic differentiation. So that's what we're working on it. And to attempt to bring closer those indicators. So to remove this gap, or to bridge this gap between peoples that have low TFR and high TFR. And I think that in order to expand the number of users, we need to make sure that this product is in demand. And so we need to follow up, we need to advertise, we need to increase awareness. So if you want this product to be pinned up on the wall of each governor's office or the mayor's office. So because it's not only information, because this information provides thought for action. And this is very important. So then the measures of demographic policy, the Prime Minister had a meeting. And so until June, so we need to develop new methods how to motivate a higher birth rate. And so, but for this, we need a simple forecast. So much depends on how we're going to follow up on this product. And so we do have this. Rosstat provides information. The Ministry of Labor is there as well. And so then they're responsible for the demographic policy development, and then the regional programs are developed. And I think that so we need just to create this this sheet can be a good basis for increasing awareness. It could become a pivotal part around which so people will start building their understanding of the problems on hand and how to improve the situation. And so our Department of Population of Moscow State University won a small grant, and we did some training. So if we had had this product 2 months ago, certainly, so this training course would have been much more efficient. And so this is the first step. So training, use it as a training, as guidelines, as training materials. Teaching, certainly I would like to see another sheet. So then demographic and family policy. So where we can see not only demographic indicators, but some social economic indicators, without which we cannot even explain the changes in the demographic indicators. So for example, so poverty lines, etc., purchasing power, etc. And so then regional, so baby money, so when money is given when the child is born, and so then and then if we look at the regions, so then the picture is different. Is for example in Leningrad Oblast, 9% of children get this help for children. 91% get money. So you cannot explain only by the birth rate. So that's why we need just to see income, purchasing power. So in the Urals, in Kurgan, so 61% of children get money, and in the adjacent, only 13% of mothers with babies get money. And baby money, and so that's a paradox, and we don't know just where to go, how to study, and so where to find the source. So do it yourself if you cannot find it. So we use the statistics. So without the participation of Rosstat, that would have been impossible. And so you had 2 books. So then the Youth of Russia and the Children of Russia, 2 books, wonderful books, that you published. So they were very much in demand. We don't have just to go visit different sites. It was all in one book. And so demographic, diversity, etc., disparity, all there. Very good. And so then allow me to dream about this demographic sheet with improved figures. I'd like to join to agree with what has been said about this demographic sheet. But besides theory, so we have practice, and I think that the developers of this demographic sheet have done a great deal of work, and they show their professionalism. Because we're talking not only about women and men here, and so because this so this booklet fits into a woman's purse and into a man's binder, and this is good because it's for both. It's for women and for both. So because you made the right format, so that I could always carry it with me. And this is very useful. So lots of uses we can put it to. This is something that fits into everybody's purse, irrespective of internet, irrespective of fact where you are. So it can be always with you at the time when you need it. And so unfortunately that I failed on questions and answers, but I will make some more promises. I can promise that the demographic agenda will never leave the program, the agenda of the upcoming Gaidar forums and the upcoming such large-scale, long-term events that RANEPA organizes. I can promise it will be very high on the agenda, that the three institutes of social analysis and projections and the laboratory of demographic research and colleagues I hear will continue working very closely. They will continue researching, studying, doing different types of research and do it in a quality fashion. And then I can promise that on our part, I will be supporting in every possible way so our drive for international cooperation, because we value so how useful it is when we cooperate, when the Russians and the Czech meet in Vienna, representatives of Vienna, so then these demographic sheets appear immediately. So they are born out of this wonderful wedlock, and I'm sure that will bring forth more wonderful products, not only for Gaidar forums, but on our everyday routine working effort. And I'd like to thank all the panelists and those who listen to us. And these are the sheets. So then one of the most recent publications of the Institute of Social Analysis and projections dedicated to the disabled. If you're interested, please pick up a copy. Yeah, so thank you once more. Thank you.
Ой.